Hey, welcome to Sci-Fi Eyes. I'm Chris, your host here, and this is episode 2, Voyager 1 and Friendship 1. Please remember, if you enjoy these segments, remember to like and subscribe. So, Voyager 1 and Friendship 1 are two space probes that turn out to be deadly. And Voyager 1 is from the Space 1999 episode Voyager's Return. And Friendship 1 is from the Star Trek Voyager episode Friendship 1. I'll try and be careful here so we don't get the Voyagers mixed up, because one is the name of the probe and one is the name of the show and the other one's the name of the episode. So watch that. I'll try and be explicit so we don't get too confused, okay? All right. So Friendship 1, the Voyager story, looks like it's a remake of Voyager's Return. But I don't think it's a very good one. Unfortunately, they changed some of the story elements that I think weakened it pretty significantly. And some of it might have been out of necessity because of the difference in travel between the moon and Voyager, and I'll explain that. But let me talk about the story separately first, and then I'll tell you why I think the Space 1999 one is better. All right. So the Space 1999 episode Voyager's Return, this aired in 1975, tells a story. It starts with this. They detect a probe, out in space, and it's coming along, and there's this radio message that comes in that says, "This is the voice of Voyager 1. Greetings from the people of planet Earth." And there's immediately concern, because it's known that these Voyager probes can be very dangerous. It turns out that, they have the way they cross interstellar space at very high speed is using this Queller drive, which is this nuclear engine that spews neutrons at high speeds that annihilate everything in their path. And there's also a conventional sort of chemical rocket that's supposed to be used for takeoff and landing. Well, it turns out that when the Voyager 2 probe was launched, which was the later one in the series than this one, there was a malfunction in the control system, and the engine switched prematurely. The nuclear engine came on too soon from the launch site, and it basically fried this community where the thing was launched from. So there's a lot of concern on the base that this Voyager 1 probe is coming, that the control system will be faulty and they'll get fried when it flies by, or tries to land or whatever happens. So they figure out they better take it out. They're going to blast it. Now they've got a little time because they've just detected it out in space, but it's coming. So they need to start making some plans. Well, they're getting ready to blow it up, and what do you know? They discover that Ernst Queller, the guy who designed the thing and created the Queller drive, happens to be on the base. He was incognito because of the incident with Voyager 2. And he convinces, Koenig that he can safely shut the thing down and have it land safely on the base. So Koenig decides to give him a chance to do this, I think it's kind of sweet. I think Queller really feels bad about what happened with the second probe, and wants to redeem himself, wants a chance to make good. So Koenig gives him that chance, and he manages to safely shut down the drive, and the probe lands. And everyone's really excited about this. They were hoping for this outcome over blowing it up, because they figured that it's been out in space all this time. It's probably got a lot of useful data that they want, so they wanted to put some effort into it, and that figured into Koenig's giving Queller the chance to do this. All right, so that's all good. However, then they notice, well, geez, there's these 3 other spaceships heading our way. What's up with that? What's going on? And they get a message, and it turns out these guys are called the Sidons, and these are 3, battleships of theirs, and they've been following the thing, because what happened was the probe came in contact with 2 of their planets and fried the planets. They're all lifeless now, according to the Sidons. So the Sidons are after retribution. They decided they would follow the thing and discover where it came from and take out the planet it came from in revenge. And when they discovered that the moon came from Earth, they're like, okay, we're going to take you out too. So Koenig tries to talk them out of it, and they're pretty powerful, so it looks like nothing can be done. But lo and behold, what happens? Queller steps in, and he takes off in the probe, and decides that the only thing that's going to be effective against the Sidons is the Queller drive itself. So he basically flies the probe towards them and then blasts the Sidon, starships using the Queller drive, blowing himself up in the process. And that's the story. And there's this. I think it's got some, parts that I really like. There's this great tension about trying to shut down the drive-in time. There's this little countdown that they're showing, and it's always very dramatic, and that's drawn out really nicely with the addition of some extra drama. First of all, Queller's lab assistant discovers that Queller is who he is, right? Remember, he'd had the name changed to be on the moon base, and wouldn't you know it, of course, the lab assistant, his parents were killed by the accident with the second probe. So he's got it in for Queller immediately. He's furious. Attacks Queller. The equipment they need to use is damaged, right? And so this complicates everything because time is running out. So then, Koenig gets Helena to step in and try and keep Queller going. She's basically giving him painkillers because he was injured in the attack. And so this adds to the tension, with the countdown going while they're trying to stop the probe in time. Queller only just makes it in time, of course, because of this. And there's a really tender moment for Helena that I think is really sweet. Essentially, when he finishes, she says, "Come along, doctor, you've done your work. Now let me do mine." And it was kind of touching. So I think it's a good moment for her. So all in all, I enjoy the story because the way the countdown is drawn out, I thought was nice. With that little drama there. And Queller, it's this nice redemption story. He gets to, not once, but twice. First, because he safely lands the probe, and then second, because he takes out the Sidons. It's this extra add-on plot. So I thought that was really sweet. So that's the Space 1999 episode, Voyager's Return. Now let's talk about the Star Trek Voyager episode, Friendship 1. All right. So the story starts out looking fairly similar, and having already seen the other one myself, interestingly, I immediately recognized what was going on and thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be that story. And I was really excited because what happens is we see the opening shot is of the probe with a very similar radio recording playing. This is the voice of Friendship 1. Greetings from the people of the planet Earth. And I thought, wow. And it turns out that what we see is apparently some residents of the planet in some research station, lab, whatever, and they're listening. And I'm guessing it's 1950s to 2000 type technology. It's not much more than where we are. They're hearing this message and they're going, whoa, what is it? What is it? And they're like, well, where is it? And suddenly one of them says, I don't know, but it's entering the atmosphere, and so they're all, looking, and this is kind of ominous. And I'm thinking, wow, we're going to see it from the Sidon's perspective, that the probe's going to do something bad. So I'm thinking, this will be interesting. Well, what happens, then that cuts to the opening credits. When we come back to the show, Voyager has some reason to believe the probe is here, and so they come looking for it. They're searching for the probe. And in the process of that, they run into some survivors that are, terribly irradiated. They're living underground. They're all usual radiation sickness stuff. And they, find out that the away team are looking for the probe right now. You got to remember, too, that this, whatever it is that's happened, is not that long ago. Because at some point, in the story, the Voyager crew, when they're looking for it, they make some comment on the fact that it was launched shortly after Zephyr Cochrane discovered warp drive. So there's this notion that it's pre-Federation, so it was sent out, on lower speed warp drive, like warp 4 or 5 or whatever, but it's been traveling all the time. And then remember, Voyager is several hundred years later from Cochrane's time, but got here by accident, from the caretaker, all that. So, but the probe was traveling all that time at a slower warp speed to cross all the way to the Gamma Quadrant, right? So it took all that time to get here, because remember, it's going to take Voyager something like 90 years to get back or something, and this took even longer because lower speed. So the accident, whatever it is that happened, is not that far in the past, although we don't find out exactly how long. They don't go into that. All right, but just keep that in mind, that it's fairly recent. So the people that they encounter that capture the away team have some knowledge of this. It's not lost history or anything like that. And when they find out that the away team is there to look for the probe, they're really angry. They're very annoyed. They're very upset. They're like, well, you did this to us, and so on. And so they take them hostage, all right? And this immediately gets Janeway's hackles up, right? She's not having this. She tries to negotiate with them, and it doesn't go very well. One of the hostages is killed. But eventually, she does eventually give them some help in the form of saying, okay, well, we'll help you fix the atmosphere. And there's this sort of quick fix thing at the end, fixing the atmosphere. That's really sort of a very short thing at the end. Mostly because there's this long drama period with the hostage taking. So let me talk about that, because in the other one, the drama is from the countdown. Here, there's the hostages. Now, the hostage situation, Paris tries his best. He's one of the away team to make good with the folks, and he plays medic, right? It was a good thing he was along. So he's helping them out with their radiation sickness. One of the women is pregnant and is having difficulties with her pregnancy, and he helps her with that. And despite all these sort of good works and other things that the Voyager crew are sort of hinting at are possible, the leader of the hostage takers is really not too warm to that. He treats them kind of badly, up to and leading to this rather nasty scene where he kills Lieutenant Carey, right? You might remember him. He's been around a few times. Kills Lieutenant Carey the first time, Janeway doesn't immediately comply. And it just sort of like killed my sympathy for them, because at first I was like, oh man, this is terrible, right? But that happens, right? So that got drawn out. And Janeway is forced to launch a rescue operation for the hostages, which she does, because essentially they demand to be relocated. And she explains to them this is impractical. It turns out it's the nearest M-class planet's too far away, and it's going to take 17 trips because of all the people, and it's just too big a deal. It would take them apparently years to complete this operation. So she says there's got to be something else. And that's when he kills one of the hostages. Now, they do eventually come to this thing where, we can help you fix your atmosphere, which just seems like, well, how is this whole thing, why was it so complicated? So that kind of bugged me about the plot. So that's, the quick fix of the atmosphere at the end. So then that's that story. Now, I really, as I mentioned before, I think the Space 1999 episode, Voyager's Return, I think it's much better. I think it's really because the redemption plot is nice, and the way the time is drawn out with the deadline, I think, is pretty nifty. In this one, the hostage situation, like I've said already a couple times, the fact that they killed Carey really killed my sympathy for them. Janeway is already, she's like fit to kill, and she's like, well, why should I help him, right? And I'm kind of with her. Then the second thing is, and this is the worst, okay, at one point, and it's just like this brief little reveal that not nearly enough is made of, and I think probably because the writers know it weakens the story. So the technology of this planet was actually quite low, and it turns out that it wasn't the probe that did the damage. Yeah, how about that? It turns out that the probe was carrying a scientific database, and as a sign of goodwill from the people of the planet Earth, the idea was that we will offer you some free scientific information. Now, remember, it's just after the invention of warp drive, it's our from Cochrane period on Earth. So imagine that level of technology landing in the hands of some people that are 1950s to 1970s or something like that, right? Well, it turns out they said, we use the information to build our power plants, and something, and containment grid failed, and the atmosphere is irradiated and polluted. So it turns out that they did it to themselves. And they even go so far as to try and reflect this and say, it's your fault because you sent us stuff that we didn't know how to handle, and this must be the way you colonize planets, that you send them stuff they can't manage, and then when they blow themselves up, you move in and take over, right? Just like you're doing here now. And, Janeway even points out how ridiculous that is. She's like, why would we irradiate the planets that we were planning on colonizing? That makes no sense, right? So there's this whole thing that in just a couple of lines where it's revealed where that they used this technology that they weren't really up to, and their implementation was poor, so they blew themselves up. And now they're blaming Voyager, and so that's why they deserve the hostages and take her. And so that really killed my sympathy for them. It wasn't like, the Sidons where, your thing actually fried our planet. Here it was, we took the information off your probe, which apparently landed safely because they retrieved the information from it, and we used it to construct these technological marvels that, blew us up. So I thought that really weakened the story pretty significantly. When I added that to the hostage situation, it didn't feel good. So, and I think that, some of these things had to happen, like that last change about the did it to themselves thing. Well, so what were we trying to do? Prove that humans wouldn't build a probe that could accidentally do something bad like Voyager 1 did, right? Were we trying to absolve ourselves of that because that would have been genuinely terrible? Was that why that change was made? Was it made because we believed we would have better technology by then? Because the whole thing of having them blame humans for using it seems kind of whack, right? I mean, sure, I'm sure the technology stuff would include all the necessary safety stuff that you would need and everything, right? I mean, that was part of the friendly deal. So I didn't really find that very convincing. I recommend the Space 1999 episode. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's also one of what would be one of my top picks for that series. If you haven't watched it, I know it's not as popular as Trek. I'd recommend it. Well, that was the segment for this. I hope you enjoyed that analysis. I'd love to see your comments below what you thought, and I'll see you around next time.